Welcome in to a brand new episode of a whole new ball game. I'm Alex Hughes. There's Vinnie Pasquantino, and we got a great show for you all with Ethan Chapman. He's a baseball agent and advisor for Full Circle Sports Management, and it's so great to always catch up with Ethan.
Yeah, this was a fun interview. It's interesting to get that perspective of being a player and now moving on and being an agent. So this was a pretty cool interview that shows a different side of the game that I think people will enjoy.
And I first interviewed Ethan. I'll have to share the link with the Twitterverse, but I sent Vinny, I sent you the link when I went back and I did my research because I couldn't remember exactly when I first interviewed Ethan, but I was 16 years old. I was sitting in this room actually, which is kind of sad, and I called it the Fuse Nation back then.
What's up, Fuse Nation? That's what
Yeah.
it's all about, baby. That's why I joined, because I've always been a part of Fuse Nation. So this is just this is just building your brand even more, going back through the time capsule and seeing who you interviewed before, and now we're just doubling back through. So I'm sure Fuse Nation's going to be pumped that you have him back. I was pumped. So I mean, unless you got anything, let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the show, Ethan Chapman.
Joining us on the podcast today, Ethan Chapman. He's a regional director and agent and amateur advisor for Full Circle Sports Management. Ethan, how are we doing today?
I'm good, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. It's great to be with you. And I was telling you before we got started, I went back in time and I laughed at myself now because when I first interviewed you, it was back in 2017 and you were playing down in Mexico. And I won't butcher the name now, but I was so proud of myself in that interview. I have to show you that in the first minute, I tried saying it and I got it right. And I was thrilled in that interview. And so I was laughing at myself for that. But
Yeah, no, it was a good time down there. I was, good time to learn the culture and the people and the language and all the new foods and all that too. So it was a good time, me and my wife, to go down there for that season.
So, Ethan, when we start with you, we want to start with your playing career before we kind of move on with what you're doing now. But I would like to preface, I watched that interview, and Alex started with, "What's up, Fuse Nation?" So that's how I want to start one of our podcasts from now on, Alex. I want to address Fuse Nation so they know that we're still looking out for them. So you signed in 2012 with the Royals, and you went to rookie ball, then you climbed, and then you went over to the Phillies. Kind of, what was your professional baseball experience like, starting in 2012?
Obviously, the draft was a dream come true. Just being able to finally accomplish that dream that I've been pursuing for so many years. And being with the Royals, top-notch club, good people up top, and they really value their players. So it was awesome to be able to start my career with them, get to know the life of being a pro athlete, and then getting released. I think it was in 15, and then signing on with the Phillies. That was only there for like 6 weeks, something like that. So it was a short stint with them, but just continue to play. And then did a little stint in indie ball as well. And then that final year down in Mexico. And it was cool, man. Like it was, like I said, a dream come true. Got to meet a bunch of people, and it really led into the career that I have now. So I'm really thankful for it.
looking back at your playing career, what would you be most proud of?
I think just leaving it all on the field. Like I think that even though I never made it to the big leagues, it wasn't for lack of effort or work ethic or determination. It just wasn't in the cards. You know what I mean? So I think I can look back on it and just be proud of the overall career and the effort put forth, just because, some guys, they might, go out and party or, get distracted. And, I can honestly say that I was devoted to it and I put my best effort out, and, it just didn't work out. And, sometimes you forget how cool it was to be where you were, because you're always looking to get to the next level or to get to the big leagues. And, I've talked to friends that have had made it to the big leagues, and that satisfaction only stays with you for so long. It's always trying to get to the next rung on the ladder. Okay, I got to get to arbitration. I got to get to free agency. I got to be an all-star. And, I think just being content with my efforts, I feel like was easier for me to walk away from the game knowing that I did what I could.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting point because every kid's dream that plays baseball, they want to make it to the major leagues. But then there are so many other steps because once you make it, you want to stay there. And once you stay there, you want to
Mhm.
get paid. So there's never
Right.
a, until you get that 10-year, $350 million contract that two guys have or whatever it is, then you never really make it per se. So it's interesting that, it's nice
Right.
to know
Well,
that you,
and it's even
go
yeah, and it's
ahead, go
even
ahead.
beyond that too with the guys in the Hall of Fame. I bet you it's like, they get there and they're honored, but I bet you a little part of them's like, hey, I didn't get 100% of the votes, and so it's like you never kind of get there, and
Yeah.
so, and I think that's a personal thing, and that's with like in most careers too. Everyone's always chasing a dollar or chasing a promotion, and I think it's just a personal thing to kind of be content while still balancing pursuing and creating better life for yourself. So it's a
Mhm.
good balance there.
Now, when you were playing, did you have any indication that you would want to become an agent at some point, or is it something that just kind of came about?
No, honestly, it's quite the opposite. Like I really didn't want to get involved with it, because there's somewhat of a negative stigma about agents. There could be like a shadowy figure about it, some underhanded deals or whatever. And I wanted to make sure that my morals and my ethics stayed strong. So I really didn't want to be a part of it, but what kind of led into it was I played against our Florida agent. He was a left-handed pitcher in the Angels organization, and then our my roommate for 3 years with the Royals, we actually represented, and he got to the big leagues with Detroit. And so for me, once I got towards the end of my career, they both kind of were like, "Hey, this could be a good fit for you." And then I sat down with the founder of the company, and it was a good chance for him to obviously feel me out. But I wanted to honestly see if I could be surround myself with good people continually, and it starts at the top. And so once I sat down with our founder, Barton Cerrone, I got that vibe from him that he was pushing in the same direction. And it was kind of honestly pretty seamless after that.
Now looking at it, what would you be most surprised about the stigma of the agent now that you are one? Like, is it everything you expected it to be, or are you still being surprised every day by your new role?
Well, I think that's what's cool about it. Each day's different. Each draft's going to be different. You hope to do your best. You educate yourself the best you can on the rounds and the players and the draft process. But it's so fluid. So always learning about it in that way. But there is still that negative stigma, and I think it's the agent's job to you know dispel that, and to make sure that people and the families and the players know, like, this is me as my character and my work ethic. And our company's not going to fit everybody. I'm not going to be the right agent for every player, and we know that. And so that's not either one company's better or worse or whatever it is. I think it's really about a personal feel for the player and the family, and it's about building a strong trusting relationship. And so I intend to be pretty open and honest about guys, and especially with their development, and not really like to you know, kiss a lot of butt for these kids that think that they're the best thing out there, because we all need to get better. And, and myself included, I need to get better and get well versed. And, for me to open up doors for development for these kids, and be honest with them, because, honestly, the draft is great. And, kids are able to make some money in it, but we all know that they dream about playing on TV, so it's the draft's cool, but the real money and the real career is in the big leagues. And so if they're not continually developing, then, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's just like we could just keep going back to what we just talked about, there's always that next step. I mean, some guys get drafted, lose their willingness to compete, not necessarily the willingness to compete, but just that willingness to get better. Some guys make it to the show, lose it. It's those guys that keep wanting to get better that seem to make it at a higher rate. So this as growing up as a player, you hear about the business side of baseball, but when you're in it, you try to let other people take care of the business side, especially for you with your whoever your agent is or whatever. And now as an agent, you couldn't be more in the middle of the business side of baseball. So what have you learned kind of, you're not in enemy territory by any means, but you're right in that nasty business side that everybody hears about. So what's that kind of been like for you?
No, it's been great. I've always enjoyed kind of being the middleman and like the problem solver, so to be able to do that and like you said, kind of take the players' minds off of those things so they can focus on the diamond and what they're trying to do. But it's the game of baseball has become a business now, even into like the high school ranks, and so you see these kids that they get on a ranking site or their number drops in a ranking nowadays in high school or college or whatever. And it's like they start to lose the love of the game so much earlier than before. Like, I started to lose the love like while in pro ball, and it's became a business for me, obviously. And like, so one of the main things I preach now is holding on to that love as long as possible, because once you lose that, it's really hard to get out of bed and compete every day, because it becomes a selfish thing and you start chasing the dollar or whatever it may be. So, and in keeping that childlike mindset of what baseball really is, I feel like it allows you to compete and develop the way you should.
Do you feel like you ever got the love back now that you're out of the game?
Honestly, I think that my stints in indie ball in Mexico allowed me to do that, because there was this purity about the way they went about playing the game. It was something where, in indie ball, they might not have played affiliate and they were there making, $800 a month, and, they're just grinding and they actually love the game. And same thing down in Mexico. It was, the way they went after infield outfield before a game, or the way they took batting practice, the way they prepared, it was just pure and honest. And they wanted the best out of themselves, because that was their big leagues down there. And so they were preparing every day to put on a show and to really work hard. So I think those last little bits of my career allowed me to walk away knowing that I was okay with the game. I've had some friends that when they're done playing, they can't even watch baseball for a few years after they're done. And so for me to go right back into baseball as an agent, it was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would have benefited you as a player when you were still playing affiliated baseball to potentially have gone internationally through the winter ball leagues to see the culture change that way in a winter league? Do you think that could have potentially helped your affiliated career?
Yeah, I think so. It probably could have, but it's not passing the buck or anything. It was my issue, is my hard issue. It was starting to think like, everything's great when they're promoting you and pushing you and you're doing well, and then you're really tested when the promotions stop or you go through a slump. Those are the times where your character shows. And for me, I struggled with it because you everything's going good until it's not. And so that's what's the hardest thing about baseball, specifically because in basketball, like LeBron could have the worst game ever, he's still going to score 25. And so in baseball, you can go 0 for 12, 0 for 15, and you dread going to the box the next day.
At what point did you realize your love wasn't as strong as it used to be?
I think it's a steady process. I don't think it actually hit me until I got down to indie ball or Mexico.
Mm.
I don't think that it was a conscious like this isn't fun anymore, or a conscious like I hate baseball or anything like that. I think it was just a steady progression, and then you don't really realize it until you're on your way out of it.
Mm.
So I don't want to talk about your non-love for baseball anymore. Um, but so as an agent, there's many different things that you'll do for the player. You represent the player in negotiations with the teams and negotiations with companies for different things for the player. What do you think is your favorite part about being an agent? Is it the relationship with the player, or what you can do for the player? What is that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the relationship with the player and the trust that's involved. And like I said, our company is really big on the development side. And so if I'm able to open a door to, a state-of-the-art training facility or a mobility specialist or whatever it may be, something that really that can add value to their game, because like I said earlier, like that's the goal, for them to continue to develop and get to the big league. So if I can put them in the right spot that they're able to do that and have access to those things, and they see the progression. I think that's the coolest moment for me is like, obviously when they get drafted or get to the big leagues, that's, a top tier, moment for sure. But for them to see those little progressions and those little gains in their preparation and their development, and seeing things start to click for them, whether it's mechanically hitting or mechanically pitching, like I think that's what I see, because I think that's the player inside of me, and I start to understand what they're trying to accomplish. And then once it clicks for them, and everything kind of aligns, I feel like that's a pretty cool moment to be involved with.
How much do you think it helps? Because obviously, I'm sure you know other agents through other agencies, but how much would you say you have the advantage as a former player in this field of being an agent?
No, I think it's helpful. A lot of the families when we go and recruit kids or pros now, that they want to know that they're represented by someone that's been through it and that understands the process. And so I think it's pretty valuable now, especially being in my early 30s, still being not so far removed from playing. Obviously
Mm.
that at a certain point, my experience as an agent will overlap my experience as a player. And so I think once I get to there, my experience as an agent is going to speak for itself. But coming into the industry just a few years ago, relying a lot on my company to teach me, but also my playing career and my connections through there was huge. And so um, I think it makes everything a little bit easier, and the players a little bit more calm when they understand that their representation knows the day in and day out of the minor league or big league lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
What does your day to day look like? I'm sure you're busier in the off season because more things are happening in your business world. But during the season, what does your day to day look like? Are you traveling to games to watch things? Are you paying attention through social media, whatever it is? Like, what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, no, it's a lot of travel in a typical year, obviously with
Mhm.
normal travel stuff. But yeah, traveling to games. And that's from big leagues, minor leagues, college, high school, always recruiting as well for the draft. And so we have a database with all the pro guys, all their stats and all that from each game. But obviously going to spring training on in Florida and Arizona, but just making sure that the guys need everything. And constantly I handle a lot of the marketing for the company as well. So just those relationships with different companies and making sure the guys get all their gear, or even off field stuff that we work out for them too. So and like I said, that's what I like about it, that it's not like a typical 9 to 5. It's pretty flexible. There'll be maybe a day that for the first couple hours of the day I have nothing going on, and then all of a sudden at like dinner time my phone blows up, and it's time to get to work. So it's
Yeah,
just,
there's no office hours.
no, it's not. And so that's what, and if you're a motivated person or someone that can do okay with that kind of schedule, that it works out fine for me. But some people do need that structure of a 9 to 5, and luckily for me, I'm able to make it work.
What's the longest you've gone without sleep?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm a pretty strong sleeper. I'm typically in bed by 11 and up by 5, so I get my 6 hours in. I'm an early riser. But I'm usually in bed by 11 on non-travel days.
Hmm.
Well, that's right. You got to set the example for your athletes, right? Huh? You gotta you gotta make sure, if you could do it, they could do it since they're still playing. Uh,
Yeah, well, and that's a big part of it too. We're not like I said, I want guys to get to the big leagues and accomplish their dreams. So if they're going out partying, or if they're up and late playing video games, like they're not showing up at the ballpark ready to go, and so that's their job. And for a lot of kids, it's either they sign for a lot of money and they don't need to think that they need to put in the work, or they're in high school and college and they think they've already made it because they're ranked high on some site. And all that's not true. You need to be able to produce day in and day out. And so for you to get sleep and wake up and go to the weights and do your thing, like I feel like that's, like you said, a good example to set, but pushing them to do that as well.
so when you look at the draft now, I'm sure it's changed, but since you just came into the industry a few years ago, it probably hasn't changed quite as much for you as it would for some others. But with the use of technology now, how are you able to dissect if a player is good enough or not? Because I mean, a guy who doesn't know how to hit could hit 100 off the tee, and you know they're ranked really high. But like, how do you determine who you're going to take on, and you know who you're not?
Well, I think that's where a lot of my playing career comes into effect, is knowing what works and what doesn't. You know, knowing playing against guys or with guys that are in the big leagues now and what they've developed. And like you said, there has been some, some changes even as far as terminology goes. What guys are actually trying to do inside the box or on the mound. And so just staying up to date as much as you can with that, but also I feel like keeping a good middle ground between old school and new school, about what they're looking for, or the analytics of things, because they are important. But just understanding that the numbers on analytics are, I feel like, a guide. And so when you're trying out something different mechanically and it produces this kind of result, how do you replicate that now? And so those are the kind of things where I feel like you have a good balance. And seeing these guys, and I still like laying eyes on guys. I don't like to just go off of numbers or analytics or even kinematic sequences now that we go through. So just a lot of different things that, like you said, aren't typical 5 years ago even.
I'm always interested in this question. How much of, the pie chart, right, that you're looking at a player that you might reach out to or something, but how much is makeup fill out your pie chart when you're looking at prospects that you might choose?
I don't know a specific amount, but it's a big deal, especially if you're a team and you want to invest $5 million into a player, and that's on the big league level and a free agent contract or even in the draft. You want to make sure that he's not going to embarrass your club,
Hmm.
and so the whole thing is like they're buying a product, and obviously the ability is important, but especially in the draft, if you go high in the draft and you're a first rounder, like you're going to be doing a ton of interviews. You're going to be, in the limelight a little bit, and they got to make sure that you're not going to embarrass them and you're not going to embarrass yourself. So for you to be able to formulate a sentence properly is important.
Hmm.
So do you do any training with your athletes on, you know, things like that, like how to answer? Because, you know, there's probably some guys, if they're drafted really high, they probably get asked the same questions over and over and over again. Like, are you able to help them with kind of, hey, here's how you one can sort of avoid the question, and two, answer it at the same time. You know, Alex hates that I'm saying that as a broadcaster journalist, because he, you know, but you know what I'm saying, how you try to slightly avoid questions, not to avoid them, but just so you don't have to go any deeper into anything. So is that something that you're
Right,
able to do?
right. Well, and that's from the big league side all the way down to the guys that are going through the draft and they're doing the in-home interviews with the scouts. So it's just something about not necessarily giving cookie cutter answers, but having a few in your back pocket where, if you don't have a solid answer, or if you just things like you said, there's, a lot of repetitive questions. So things that you can kind of say off the top of your head that make sense and put you in a good light. I feel like having a few of those in your back pocket and a little bit of prep work before those meetings are important, just so you don't stumble all over yourself or anything like that. But I also encourage all the players to say, like, hey, like I'm not quite sure. It's okay to not know everything. And so just being honest and open to whatever interview it's going to be, whether it's media or with a professional team. Like it's okay to be honest and say you don't know, but having a few answers in your back pocket, I feel like are important.
Yeah,
Did you?
and
Oops, you go
I know,
ahead.
I know a lot of people get really nervous during those too, because you want to kind of, what I kind of meant with my question is, you want to answer what they want you to say. So like it's what they want. I remember one time I was asked in a pre-draft interview, you know, what kind of person, you know, do I eat, sleep, and breathe baseball essentially? And in my head, I'm like, well, when I leave the field, I try to become Vinnie Pasquantino the person, not Vinnie Pasquantino the baseball player. But in my head, I'm also thinking, well, he talked about how much they want people to love baseball. So then I'm just sitting there like, should I just say, yes, I eat, sleep, and breathe baseball all the time? Or should I tell him the truth that when I leave the field, I try to get away from it a little bit? Like, I just remember it probably took me
Yeah.
30 seconds just to formulate the answer, because I had no clue of what to do.
Yeah, no, and there's some questions that they try to trip you up on just to see how you kind of react, and that's good. Like it's okay to fail. They want, like, even in in amateur baseball, they want to make sure that you know how to come back from failure. So for you to stumble around a question, like, it's okay. There's even like silly questions on these questionnaires now that are like, when you go to the grocery store, do you return the grocery cart to the designated area? And it's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
obviously a silly question, but like, who's gonna say like, no, I just leave it in my parking space? Like, no one's gonna say that.
Well, one of the most meaningful things I remember hearing uh, when I went through an interview process that will stick to me forever is always know the people that you work with. Not for the interview question, but just because it makes you a better person if you know who you're working with. And I was asked once, who was the janitor at your high school? Like, what was their name?
Mhm.
And I knew the name because I remember when I was younger that just being, something that you just did. You got to know everybody that you worked with. And I think whoever was asking me that was pretty impressed that like I actually took the time to get to know somebody that I wouldn't normally interact with. So it is so funny how those interviews just go everywhere.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing. Like you said about the janitor, like one of the biggest things that go viral on social media is when, someone, say LeBron or Usain Bolt, like they say what's up to somebody that's just working there, and it's like it might be a simple, like they just give them a handshake or a head nod, but it makes them look a certain way to the public, and it's like, we don't know, that could be super fake and phony or whatever, but it gives them this perception of like, hey man, that's a good dude, and as a society, we like to see people succeed, and so if it's simple as like, hey, he seems like a good person, like it makes it a lot more easy to root for you.
Mm.
Did you like doing interviews, either as a player or now?
Yeah, I think for me, like, because I never was a big time prospect, I did get promoted pretty quick once I got drafted, but I think for me, I enjoyed it because I saw the benefit of people getting to know me more as a person, because I wasn't somebody that was a hot shot draft or a top prospect. So I think it was a fuel for me to become sort of a fan favorite, because I wanted to be known, but I also wanted people to know me as more than just a baseball player or a guy with a number on. I want them
Mm.
to. So I invited people into my life. They got to know my wife, or now my son, and so it's just like, especially now with social media, it's a little bit easier. But when I was playing, it wasn't so prevalent. So, just being able to get on there and people to hear your voice and hear your story, it was a big benefit for me.
So with your son, are you automatically representing him already? Or is he going to go through meetings and have to, decide on his own?
Well, that's what's like. People always ask me, like, "Hey, is he gonna like when's he gonna play baseball? When's he gonna play baseball?" I'm like, honestly, like, I struggled with it initially because it is a hard life. You know what I mean? Like being away from your family. Like my wife, I was away from her most of my career. Like I'd be home for 3 months out of the year. She was working, and so like it's not all it's cracked up to be. And that's why, like I said earlier about having a love for the game, like it's super important because it's not easy. You can
Mm.
lose sight of that stuff a lot more easy than you think. And so, for my son, like obviously, I just want him to succeed. Whatever it is, I want him to feel like he has a passion for something. I want him to feel like he is special in doing something, whether it's sports or engineering, real estate. Like he can pick what he wants. But I think there's something special about feeling good at something, feeling like you're above average, or feeling like you're able to compete and succeed. And that's what I want for him the most.
So I think something that would interest people about agents is you can't just get up one day and say I'm an agent now. Like you can't just call your friends and say, "Hey, I'm an agent. I want to represent you guys. This is what I take in." What was the process to become an agent like?
You have to take a certification exam, and so once I got hired on with Full Circle, um, it was a process of obviously learning on the job from them, and being educated from them from the top, and then flying to New York. It's a 2-day event. First day is like a big old review. They give you your handbooks and all that stuff, and the following day you come through and you take an exam and you pass, fail, and but the exam is more for you to learn some of the tidbits, but a lot of it I would say would be on the job or from experiencing from somebody else, and learning from somebody else. Because learning definitions or learning protocols is important and it's valuable. But like I said, the draft and free agency and arbitration, all this stuff is pretty fluid. There's not that many cases where if everything falls in exactly how you planned. So being able to learn on the job and trust the people you're working with and learning from them, I feel like that's the biggest benefit.
So as an agent, do you specifically, like, we know you represent baseball players, but say you wanted to represent a basketball player, could you just do that, or would you have to pass a different exam for that certification?
There is a different cert, and then because the biggest thing is they have a different collective bargaining agreement, so they have a different CBA, and so that's the biggest piece of the ins and outs of that sport. Like specifically with, say, football, they declare for the draft, and then the agents represent them right away, and they, from what I understand, pay up front for any combine costs or any training leading up to the combine. As in baseball, you don't really declare, because you can turn it down, and then you can go back to school. You don't lose your eligibility that way. And then we don't provide anything of financial value until they're signed and delivered on the pro side. So it's just silly things like that where those are the differences where, it's not just easy to just pick up an NFL client versus a baseball client.
And in baseball, when I guess in high school, baseball's so weird with the rules. So in college, you're technically an advisor, right?
Right.
Because you can't provide anything for the athlete. In high school, are you allowed to be an agent, or are you technically an advisor before the draft as well?
It's the advisor process as well, because going back to the nothing, don't provide anything of financial value. Like I can't even have an amateur in my car, just stuff like that where it's an advisor role, because that's literally what you provide. It's education and then advice, and kind of just putting their options in front of them in layman's terms, and kind of just being a middle ground, sounding board for them, because obviously the pro scouts are going to want them and want them to sign because they think they should get into the system sooner. So they're a little biased. And then obviously the college coach is a little biased as well because he wants them on campus. And so for us to come in and just say, hey, like, this is your options, and make sure they feel educated and comfortable with what's going on, it's a lot easier to make a decision that way.
So Ethan, this is our favorite part of the interview. It's a new segment. It's called Balls and Strikes.
It's not new anymore. It's
Yeah,
not new
that's
anymore,
true.
Alex. We've done it for more than half of the episodes.
That's true. But anyway, so it's a segment we do called Balls and Strikes. So it started after Vinnie called me out for asking a terrible question. So Vinnie's going to start. So if Vinnie asks a question you like, you call it a strike. And if you don't like the question, you call it a ball. And if you call it a ball, then it goes to me. And then the first person to a strikeout wins. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah. I don't have to answer it though, right? I just say strike or ball.
You can answer it. Yeah.
If it's a strike, you have to answer it. Because
we swing
if it's a ball, you can. If it's a ball, make as much fun of us as you want, and just roast us for the questions. So, all right, okay, here it is. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be, and why?
Ball.
I just disagree completely.
That was an awful question.
Disagree.
All right. Let's see here. What would be your
going off the
favorite,
head, Alex? Huh?
Yeah. What would be your go-to snack?
I'll give that a strike. I would say, I honestly, I just like a banana with some peanut butter. And so I'll grab a knife and go straight to the jar, and that's how I'll do it.
I love it. Peanut butter is so underrated. What would you say your favorite sports movie of all time is?
Ooh, so that's a strike. Any sport. Let's see.
Yeah, any sport.
I like the natural, man. I'm a
Hmm.
big natural guy.
Hmm. I love it. Well, Vinny, I want to apologize in advance. This is going to be uh, three up and three down. This is going to be an easy strike. So you went to three World Series games when the Angels made it to the World Series. What was your favorite game out of those three?
Wow, man. See, he pulled out info that he already had. I feel like that's unfair. So
Fine. That's fine.
that's gonna be a strike though. Yeah, so honestly, I was at the World Series game where Bonds hit the home run off Percival, and that thing was like 800 feet. Like that dude hit that ball so far over my head. And just remembering that, um, and Percival was the guy that was like, "Hey, I'm challenging you. I don't care who you are. I'm going after you." And Bonds was the same mentality, and obviously Bonds won that one. But it is hard to beat being at the Game 7 like celebration party for the Angels too in 2002. So that's tough to beat as well. So just getting down there to know all the guys, and that's when I just really started to be a true baseball fan. I was 12 years old, and that's when I started actually, start to know the players by name and their numbers and really fall in love for the game. So overall, that was just a pretty cool season. Living 20 minutes from the stadium, and I probably went to 20, 30 games that year. So it was a pretty cool experience and season.
Okay, so congrats, Alex. You win. So we have two show questions that we have to ask. Number one, do you prefer drinking out of glass or plastic cups?
Glass.
Good answer. Two, and there is a correct answer for this one. What is the best position in baseball?
Just overall, or
Yeah,
like
not the most important or anything like that. Not the most valuable. What is the best?
shortstop.
It's not right. Would you care to expand? Would you care to expand anymore on why the shortstops? That's the best position?
Every kid grows up wanting to be the shortstop, man. Like that's especially when I was growing up, everyone wanted to be the shortstop for the Yankees. Like everyone wanted to be that guy. So typically, like the kids coming up through, like the best athletes are the pitcher and shortstop, and so obviously they expand from that as they get older, but you always put the guy at short.
I assume Vinny was never the shortstop, so that's probably
That's not true. Alex, Legion Ball 2014, I think. I turned a double play at shortstop, so I don't want to hear it from you, Alex. And then Ethan, where can everybody find you on social media? 30-second elevator pitch, blow yourself up. Where can everybody find you so they know where to follow you after this interview drops?
Yeah, Instagram's at Ethan Chapman 23. Twitter is at Ethan M as in Matthew Chapman, and then my company is at Full Circle _ SM.
Ethan, we appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate the time, guys. Thank you.
What an interview with Ethan Chapman. I just stole Alex's verbiage right there. That is exactly what he would say. What an interview. We had a phenomenal time with Ethan. How did I do? How did I do?
You got to go a little slower, Vinny.
Oh, a little slow. What an interview with Ethan Chapman. We had a great time sitting down and chatting with him. No, but seriously, that was a great interview. We're pumped to bring that to you guys. But we have a super special episode coming on Thursday that I think will really excite some people. We have a college preview of what's going to happen this season, and we've got some really fun guests that are coming onto the show.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know I tweeted this too. Like some of these guests that we're getting on all on one show, it's going to be like a must listen to podcast. Like, I don't think you would be able to get through an entire college baseball season without listening to this podcast that will be dropping on Thursday.
Yep, that's right. What Alex said. So we're pumped for that. We're excited for this preview. And that means baseball season officially for Division One begins on Friday. I know some other places have started so far, but Their opening day is this Friday, and that's super exciting, and we're pumped to get them on the show.
Players are reporting to spring training. This is the best time of year, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good time of year for sure. So we're excited for it, and stay tuned. Get ready to listen on Thursday.
Awesome. I can't wait, and I know you won't be able to miss it. But again, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening to us wherever you get your podcast, subscribe and drop that 5-star review. But you got anything else, Vinnie?
I got nothing. We'll see you on Thursday.
All right. See everyone on Thursday.